comment and a remark. Nation that doesn't value its heritage ruins its future, and a country which does not cherish its heritage loses its future as well. Now, this is very interesting. I mean, this is what we are also having to do today. That understanding of our heritage and trying to understand how it is going to change our future scenario. So, in this, on today's date, it is true for all the societies and their culture, and more so in India, that such a diverse and distinguished culture and heritage is part of our lifestyle. And it is very important that we start looking at it in our deeply and try to understand it more. And it's manifested, I mean, this culture is manifested through lots of things, being tangible and intangible. And when we look at our past and our own heritage, and we look at our own life, we find that in the older times, I mean, we've been listening to a lot of tales and fables from our mothers and grandmothers, and we find that all those things were basically trying to tell us something that is related to the past, trying to bring the family together, trying to put things together and bring some certain kind of a values and assets, I mean, which are tangible and intangible assets, which you're saying intangible more. So those stories and assets are very important for us to basically carry it forward, and that is what we are looking into it when we are looking at culture as as an asset and how it can be managed for as an asset for the posterity. So looking at it in the modern perspective, and on today's date, what we are also looking at it, there are when you understand heritage, you are having the tangible and intangible parts, where the intangible parts are more important because those are the ones which are getting lost, while the tangible ones, the physical ones, are always there as a representative of an idea which we also have. That is what we do as a custodian when we are looking at it through ASI and ministries, because they are basically all looking for the tangible ones where you're talking of the monument. But nonetheless, we have to understand that these important representations also are a representation of an idea that has come from the past, and how it actually affects and rather puts that into the future perspective, and you start looking at it from that viewpoint. That is very important from the point of view of culture and heritage. Now, in our current scenario, what we are doing right now, we are trying to understand it from different perspectives, which is what this conference is also going to do. To an extent that we are looking at culture and different custodians, those who are basically looking at culture and trying to understand like what we are doing from our college side. We are also developing certain kind of development controls in the bylaws that are managing or trying to understand the development controls for different monuments. So that and looking at the natural landscape and the cultural landscape for the monuments. So that is one part of it which we are doing as a heritage bylaws and the development perspective. Because if we look at it from today's day, what is happening that you have heritage, you have a good repository, but there is a need to have development in place, and that development is actually at times it is with the society and the culture, and sometimes it challenges the same thing, which one has to now look at it very selectively or understand it very softly, where development should come and how culture is going to basically be managed with the development process which is going on, which is what we are seeing in India per se right now. So in this conference, there are four different aspects that we are covering. The first one is a holistic aspect, holistic heritage and conservation. That is the first part of it, which leads on to the session number 2, that is digital innovations and trying to understand the documentation and adaptive reuse of different buildings. So trying to gather culture and trying to bring it together. The third part is going into the the cultural tourism and socio-economic and economic impact per se, which is what is going on right now in different parts of India at the same time. And the fourth one is, nonetheless, it is basically looking at the future trends that are there as part of cultural landscape and how it is going to shape our society as a whole. So, with this note, I conclude my remarks and thank you so much. Welcome to the conference.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words. I also have a great pleasure to introduce to the gathering our guest of honor, Professor Charanjit Singh Shahji, who is an architect, planner, and infrastructure expert, with 5 decades of practice and the founding principal at the Creative Group. He is an author, scholar, educationist, teacher, art and architecture critic practicing sustainable green architecture. His works speak of his contribution to the development of large infrastructure projects like airports, metro, railway stations, and land ports. May I request Professor Charanjit Shahji to please come and occupy the seat on the dais. May I request everyone to give a huge round of applause for Sir, please.
May we request our Chief Guest, Honorable Mugdha Sinha Ma'am, to say a few words.
Namaskar and very good morning to everyone. The esteemed dais, our guest of honor, Dr. Shashi Balaji, Dr. Sachidanand Joshi ji, Pratibha ji, and other dignitaries on the dais, our esteemed guests of the stage, students and friends of IGNC and the Vastu Kala Academy. Thank you very much for the invite to be here to do some, to carry on a dialogue, because we are 5 days away from our India Art, Architecture and Design Biennale, finally getting over after 115 days. And architecture and design was a very, very big part. It was for the first time that we were able to get design and architecture in the larger embrace of culture and heritage. So being present here today as we wind up our first ever, the youngest Biennale in the world, if I can say that, organized by the Ministry of Culture, it is very heartening for me to see that a standalone institute is organizing in collaboration with the IGNC an international conference on heritage as an heritage asset management for posterity and the future. So it becomes very, very important. I'm also standing at a cusp of very important developments, as Dr. Mehra also said from the stage. The Honorable Prime Minister in the last 10 years has given a very, very, very distinct clarion call, which is based on the fact that we need to write our own narrative of what it means to be a country, what it means to be a nation, what it means to be a civilization. And we are 5,000 plus with new technological tools that have become available to us, be it the isotopic analysis of the diets from the skeletons or the genome-based DNA sequencing, which is in addition to what the conventional tools that the archaeologists always had. Probably the 5,000 years old plus date will get pushed further on, and we'll be a older civilization and older democracy. For that, it is also very interesting because let me just quote a French, philosopher who spent considerable amount of time in India in Pondicherry, and André Gide is what I'm talking about. He was a sociologist, historian, author, and he said something very interesting which applies to us very, very prominently. And he said that everything that needed to be said has already been said. Why we need to say it again is because people were not listening. And I find it is so apt for our Indian knowledge system, because everything today that needed to be said has already been said in our Indian knowledge systems. You look at the diversity, you look at the vastness of the literature that has been created, the philosophy that has been created, so much so that stories of Panchatantra written in the 4th century by Vishnugupta got translated in the Middle East, then went on to influence La Fontaine in France to actually create the concept of storytelling in Europe. There's so much that India actually is the root from which so many other branches have spurred. So it becomes very important, because when you talk of architecture and design, what has survived as the visual representation of India's legacy is in the form of rock art, in the form of The Buddhist caves and viharas, the stupas, is in the form of all the diverse monuments that we have today. That is the first visual representation of design and architecture. And this is not just something that happened, it has a whole, gamut, a whole kaleidoscope of literature. So the Buddhist viharas are not just happening because of some person thinking that I'll make. There is a textual context to what has been built. So there's a Silpa Sastra, there's in the Buddhist canon, there are Buddhist texts from which things have been emulated. They are workers who have actually gone and built. So there is this whole linear understanding of text and practice. The theory and praxis in Indian culture is so vast and so beautiful. It is absolutely amazing. So what we are probably trying to do is figure out why this whole concept of asset is important. The first time that I heard of asset was when we spoke of the balance sheet, right? That has a asset and a liability column. So what is it that we speak of when we talk of heritage? I see Dr. Mehra also mentioned the intangible and the tangible. Our intangible heritage, in fact, has been more well preserved than the tangible. We've lost out on the tangible to a large extent. Decay has happened, ruin has happened, people have built structures over our structures. But what has remained is the sacred knowledge that has traveled through oral history. And that is what we need to archive today. How can we use the tools of technology, the new and the emerging, to better preserve, to better conserve is what we must focus on. See, if everything that needed to be known is already there, then we don't need to do anything. But we need to do it in a language in which the contemporary generation will understand it. And this is also important because the Honorable Prime Minister has spoken about the Panch Pran. And one of the Panch Pran is about how do we write our own history, free from the dust that is gathered from the ideation that happened at a certain point in time. How do we move from that? How do we redust that and look at things from a perspective that is more Indian, that is ours? So that is what is important. Just give you also an idea of what we did. Collaboration is very important because that is how you do a peer-to-peer learning. Achalji is here, he does a lot of preservation and conservation through digital and conventional means. But what is also important is collaboration. Collaboration is when I see a gathering like yours, I would be much happier if we have all other institutes all across the country become part of this international conference, because the more minds you have, the better outputs and better outcomes we can expect. Asset, as I was telling you, is a very, if you look at it, it's a very capitalistic understanding because the balance sheet is a very capitalistic understanding. So today, the moment you say today our assets or our heritage can be an asset, and how do you do asset management? That is not a term of culture. Asset management has never been a term of culture. Asset management has always been a term of the financial, the banking, the investment, the corporate sector. And why are we bringing culture and commerce together? Because somewhere, if you look back, you will see culture has happened because of all the interactions. Culture is not possible without all the commerce. But when we talk of this asset building, we should also look at the concept of the intellectual property right. Because all the asset that has got created in the country is our intellectual property right. But are we able to monetize the asset? We are doing asset management very well. We can even do better. We can preserve it, we can digitize it. But are we able to monetize it? Should we all the other thing is, should we also monetize it? Do we need to monetize it? We need to monetize it because we are not as yet a fully developed country with all the resources at our command. We have 1.4 billion people to look at. So if we can monetize our assets, we'll be able to put more funding into the management of these assets. And why is it important? Because if you look at the classical economics, there were four factors of production: land, capital, labor, and enterprise. This asset management today, as part, I see it as part of the intellectual property rights. It is very important for us to build royalty and revenue sharing models on everything that we do. I am sometimes deeply worried because with digitization, who can afford the best quality, scanners, the highest resolution photogrammetry instruments? It's only the rich who can do it. No? Countries like us have this narrow Pareto optimality of the cake. We have to also look at the health of the people, the education of the people. So what we can do is, because we sit on assets and because we are today living in a multiverse, which is all these NFTs that are happening, we should be extremely focused on building smart contracts of how our assets, when they get digitized or when they get used, our intellectual property needs to be preserved. So my understanding of asset management is not the physicality of the preservation, the conservation, the digitization, for the memory and for posterity, but it is also using these assets that we have today to be able to make these assets work for us. Because that this is the concept. If you look at the contemporary world, Maya ko Maya mile kar kar lambe haath. It is this is the concept that we are living in today. So how can we use them? How can we make these monuments self-sustainable? 3 or 4 projects you are aware. Very recently, the ASI started what is called the Monument Mitra in its version 2.0 avatar. It is also asking the public-private partnership. It is also looking at the CSR funding to become a part of this whole asset management of the heritage. The other thing that we are doing is we are not just focused domestically. We are also like a Janus face. We have a domestic constituency because it's important. Because if we don't know our past, we will have no insights for the future. We will be like a rootless tree trying to spread out its branches and then not knowing where we are anchored. But we also have to look at how the globe is operating. So what we have today in terms of asset is not only with us. Our assets have got scattered because of certain colonial reasons, if I can say that, and those need to be brought back. So there is also an emphasis on repatriation. But when you look at repatriation, there is also an important concept of, can we do long-term loans and get, instead of asking everybody to give ownership, can we also look at displays of these artifacts which we've never seen, which belong to us actually? Can we also do scouting of our tangible and intangible assets? Only yesterday there was a news of this particular temple in Pakistan, which is getting eroded because the Pakistan army wants to extend its canteen, and that is the Devi of very important Devi of people who stay in Jodhpur, the Bard community of Jodhpur, the Dethas basically. So how can we preserve it? We don't even know. I have been to several places, several libraries, where we found a lot of manuscripts properly digitized by different countries, but saved under the head of anonymous, because you can't read languages. So another way of bringing out this knowledge to the people is through transliteration and translation, so that more and more people can actually read. See, one thing is to take pride and know that we have so much, but the other thing is also to be able to read what is written in those. We are not living in a world of general knowledge alone. We are also living in a world where we'd like to know what our ancient people said about their times, about their things. I'm very happy to share with you that I've been reading these 2 fantastic books. One is the Teri Gatha. The Teri Gatha is the first poems, the oldest poems in the Theravada Buddhist tradition about the first embodied Buddhist women monks, the ordained monks, and they say so much about the ancient times. Then Arvind Krishna Malhotra ji translated something very important called the Saptasai Gatha, which is again these 700 poems written by King Satvana Hala. These are also very important things. Now we have so much coming out, which is being, so here I get very worried because when I say the label on the book, it says penguin. Anna, it doesn't say, no, not Gita Press, it doesn't say IGNC for that matter. So my worry is that all our intellectual property right is earning royalty for people, which is nothing to do with culture. And this is very, very dangerous, I'll tell you why. It is dangerous because there is this data cartelization which is happening. If you look at the publishing world abroad, you will figure out that they are just not publishing literary books. They're also, sluice gating access to a whole lot of information. Tomorrow, what will happen? Your own manuscripts translated in readable English, you will have to pay for reading your own stuff to another foreign country or foreign publisher. That worries me a lot because when we talk of asset management, my heritage should be freely available to citizens of the country, or for that matter, anybody who wants to read it. And today, because of this data cartelization which is happening, I will not have access to my own data. Tomorrow, it is very much possible that my own blood test results may not be accessible to me. I will have to pay to get that kind of information because of this data cartelization which is happening. I'm worried because I'm actually seeing this happening when we use our when we use digitization. I actually see that people don't need to see our artifacts. The moment you digitize something, it is available for the world to see on payment. People are not ready to pay 10 bucks, 20 bucks to go to the National Museum to see the actual object. They're happy to see a digital version of this, paying maybe more than 1,000 bucks. That is what is worrying me. So the intellectual property preservation, conservation, being able to match the asset management with smart contracts is something that I think we should focus on. But I understand this is architecture and design, so we must also look at the architecture and design of the contract making, which is very, very important for me. There are several projects ASI is working on. The UNESCO intangible list, the tangible declaration of world sites, the ECO, the GEO, all these are very important because they allow the larger number of one monument seen by larger number of people also allows us to have a collective memory of the monument, which is also very important. It's just not about tourism, but it is also creating a collective memory so that tomorrow somebody cannot wrongly write about the monuments because you have created allies and you have created witnesses. That is very, very important. The role of technology and the role of stakeholders also becomes very important. I am sure the international conference will talk about these two very important things. I had a small window of discussion and seeing the various works of the first and the second year students on Bundelkhand and Mehrauli. I must compliment you because what you have done by hand is absolutely amazing. You know, these hand skills also we are losing. So I really compliment the faculty. I compliment the Vastukala Academy for doing some very serious work. I also had a chance to see the abstract of the various papers that are coming out in your last year's booklet, that the catalog which has come out. And I think it's very, very, the proceedings of the conference. And I think some very interesting stuff that I see, which is very, very important. I only urge that please disseminate this as widely as possible. I'm also very happy to offer the services of the India Culture Portal. If you'd like to share copies, e-copies, we'll be very happy to upload on our portal as part of the ministry. I'm sure IGNC is already doing that. Please make this knowledge as freely, as vastly accessible to people, because if more and more people learn about things, that is how the dissemination and the transmission of knowledge will happen. Thank you so much for having me here amidst all of you, and thank you for the work that you do. Of course, IGNCs are our own institute, so I can't thank my own hand, but thank you for all these collaborations that you strike, because culture, commerce, collaboration is something that will drive us into the new era, the way it has been envisaged by our Honorable Prime Minister. I wish you All the best, good luck, and look forward to receiving the recommendations of this conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your inspiring words. May I request Professor Shilpi Sinha, ma'am, to present a bouquet of flowers to Professor Charanjit Shahji. May we have a huge round of applause, please. May we request our guest of honor, Dr. Shashibala ma'am, to say a few words.
Namaste to all of you, Mugdha Sinhaji, Satchidanand Joshi ji, all on the dais and off the dais. It's a great opportunity to be with you here on this special occasion for the inauguration of the conference by Vastukala Academy. Being brief in just addressing you all, I just want to come to the points that I want to raise or just discuss with you on this special occasion. Is yes, we all are proud of saying and accepting and understanding that India, yes, it is a land of wonders, and the whole world has agreed, accepted it. People have written books about it. It's not just physical. It's intellectual, it's aesthetical, it's artistical, it's ethical. There are many perspectives to look at Indian heritage, tangible and intangible. And during whatever I have been experiencing in my life, I would say that yes, government is running its own way, making policies, and whatever they can do, they are doing. But at the individual level, also, we have certain duties to preserve it, to respect it, to save it. There should be a sense of connectivity that yes, this was what our forefathers created. We are proud of that. But to pass it on to the next generations, we have to do something. Are we able? It's just a question that there are so many huge temples which are not possible to be built in this age of technology with the latest technological tools. Can we do that? I don't know if it is possible. And the deterioration is also happening. There are many reasons of deterioration. First of all, that comes to my mind today, and I want to bring to your knowledge, especially the Joint Secretary sitting here, that I had a shocking experience when I went to Ajanta Ellora around, I don't remember the exact date, but maybe 7-8 years ago. Especially the Kailashnath temple at Ellora. And what is happening now? There was a boulder that fell down. I met the ministers, not only one, but 2-3 ministers. Sorry to say that nothing happened. Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi ji, she specially invited, and when I sent her the photographs about the deterioration, what is happening there, how plants are growing there, how they are to be uprooted, not just by just uprooting them, no, you have to be somebody very technically efficient to uproot that, because otherwise they will grow again. How water is seeping into, how there are cracks there. The ASI has its limited resources. So what is happening there and how we are losing our heritage? We have to be very, very serious about it. It's declared as World Heritage, but are we following all the rules and regulations of having this World Heritage site? Again, there is a question. Just a few years ago, when I was teaching at the National Museum Institute, suddenly I saw some of the ancient sculptures put around the building of the National Museum. Taking out any of the sculptures from inside to outside, you, I think, would be better to tell me that what kind of weathering effect is there. So these things are also happening. Another point is that Mukherjee was talking about the huge temples and our heritage abroad. You see, India is the only country that caused a shift from tombs to temples. When Indians went there, when our architects went there is not much history about it. Who built Borobudur? Who were the architects? Do you know that UNESCO dismantled it 3 times to rebuild it? In spite of the fact that they were putting down stone by stone, numbering them. And finally, what Borobudur came up is not the real, it doesn't match the original photographs. And when you go, as many times I go to Borobudur, I come back with more questions than answers. And some of the stones, some of the blocks are still, they don't match. For example, the legs are of a different body figure and the upper portion is of a different figure. So it is there, but still they have done a lot. What the foreign scholars, the archaeologists have done, they came as colonizers, but the Dutch people who have the work they have done in Indonesia, the French in Cambodia, like this we can talk about so many countries and who told us about our heritage in these countries, especially China, about Tibet, about Cambodia, about so much has to be said about it. On this point, I would also, because it worries me that, so I want to share with you that wherever you go abroad, mainly if you go to European countries or to America and you visit the museums, you will see huge collections of Asian arts, wherever you go. And they are the people who are spreading our knowledge. They are our cultural ambassadors without demanding anything from us. Recently, a few years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, there was a news that Netherlands is going to return all the Indonesian artifacts. What will happen? We have to think about it. Because the Dutch have collected these statues, so I don't know how much work did they do, how much books did they write, how much research was involved. Who will do now in Indonesia? I'm not sure. Another question that I want to just point, you can say, just my sharing my views is that more we think about all these ancient heritage sites, so that more tourists can be attracted. You see, there is a difference between tourism and pilgrimage. We have to keep a balance between the two. Anybody comes from abroad to visit any Buddhist site, he comes as a pilgrim. He doesn't come as a tourist. When people go as tourists to these sacred sites, I have seen, it pains me, you will also be pained, that people with shoes, they're climbing on the statues to have a good photograph. How can we accept all these things? So we have to be very, very careful about it. Then, when we talk about architecture, whatever we have created over the millennia, it's all based on Shastriya knowledge. And that Shastriya knowledge has traveled all over Asia and now in other countries also, they are following the same principles. We are the inheritors of this huge heritage. It's our duty to pass it on to the next generation by preserving it. Not only that, but also working on it. Normally, there is what we see, what the way foreigners talk about our temples, sometimes they are not right. The most, as Mukherjee was saying, that for our reading our own text, we'll, in English translation, we'll have to pay for it or we depend on others. Another important point to understand this is when we read in English translation or in any other language, I don't know, when I read any philosophical text in English, I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm more confused. Then I have to go back to Sanskrit. Because Sanskrit is lost. Sanskrit is not that much, because now there is a difference and people are more inspired and they are more inquisitive. They are trying to learn more Sanskrit. Now there is a change, there is a shift coming. But still, we need more. All our kinds of heritage can be understood better if we have a capsule for learning Sanskrit. Just the very basic terms, whatever is related to your field. That is just my suggestion. I had in National Museum Institute, I had introduced a small capsule course for learning Sanskrit for history of art only. The terms that are used there, for example, we have the capsules for dance and music. I'm sorry again to say that in the books I see so many errors because the writers are writing without having that basic knowledge of Sanskrit. So they don't understand. Just maybe 2-3 weeks ago, there was some story published in some newspaper, and somebody sent it very proudly. And can you believe that there was a word Penakasila? Penakasila? I said, what is Penakasila? And he was writing about Indonesia. See, can you believe that Panchashila was read as Penakasila? It's because we don't know. I immediately found out, oh, this is Panchashila, because I know about Indonesia. Because I know the Panchashila principle. So through that, I could say, oh, Penakasila is nothing, it's just Panchashila. In National Museum, can you believe, there was a caption, Gataka Tales. Because the Germans write the sound J with G. So somebody wrote, without understanding, any understanding about Jataka tales, I don't know who made that caption. But these things are happening. I'm sorry to say, because you have to make policies, you have to take decisions, you have to bring a change, and the change has to be, it is required to true understanding. If we don't understand our heritage, how can we make? We will keep on making this kind of errors, which is not at all acceptable. Then whatever we will bequeath, whatever we will carry forward to the next generation, it will be in a deteriorated form. Now, another point is that all over the world, to understand Sanskrit, there is only mainly, other dictionaries also there, Monier Williams, Sanskrit English, English Sanskrit. And it is the first time that a dictionary that was made by Dr. Raghuvira before 1947, which could never be printed over these years, after even becoming independent. Now it is being published. 8 volumes are already out. 9 we are working on. Soon it will be complete. So anybody who needs a true understanding of Sanskrit words. Now it's English Sanskrit, so it will be done the other way also. So the way people are behaving, visiting our ancient sites, it's disgusting. How much, as I can just keep an eye on any of the visitors, and thousands of people visit these places. How do you dare to make them dirty? And another point that is coming to my mind is that a helipad was being constructed there so that more tourists can come easily. A few years ago, a festival of music was stopped because the vibrations of music are not good for the kids. How can you build a helipad? I wrote a few letters, nothing happened, then I passed it on to an advocate who is struggling, who is working for preservation of heritage. I don't know what happened, whether it is closed or not, whether it is still working, but at least we cannot do that in the name of tourism and making money. We have to maintain a balance. We have these structures are so fragile because they are so old. So be careful. We have to be careful. Everybody, all the students sitting here, you are the inheritors. Now we are getting old. Now it's your duty. But whatever we understand, we can share with you, and you can take it forward. So my best wishes for such an excellent conference. I hope I just could not see much, just briefs of a few. I could just uh, mm, uh, scroll down, or you can say turn the pages. But I have to read it carefully, and I hope this conference to be very successful, result oriented, impactful, and really bring a change in our thought process, in our behavior, in our sense of connectivity with the ancient heritage. They are not just stones. They are not just stones. They have a soul, and that soul is the soul of our forefathers. They created it for us and for you and for the world, not for themselves. They did not have any copyrights. Now you go to any of the museums abroad, there are so many copyrights for this photograph. As a scholar, I can't pay. They want to charge like bombs if I want to do a book. People say that we should say the quality of the photos is not that good because wherever we go, I just keep on clicking and clicking. I don't have the facility of taking a photographer with me, so whatever I knowledge I can bring, I bring. Then they say the quality of photographs is not good. What can we do? What can we do? So we are the inheritors. We have to work very, very hard. More we are moving towards globalization, so-called westernization, so-called modernization, more we are going away from our heritage. From the faith in our heritage, we are moving out because in 1952, in UN it was it was declared. You can see on the internet. It was declared that all the ancient cultures are of no use. They should be destroyed, and they destroyed a lot. During G20, we worked for it. That ancient cultures are very, very important. The modern culture has given us so many challenges which ancient cultures didn't. So, with all these words, I am highly thankful to you for inviting me, for sharing my thoughts, and best wishes once again. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your inspiring words. May I request our guest of honor, Professor Charanjit Singh Shah, sir, to say a few words.
Namaskar. I'm extremely honored. I listened three speakers, Dr. Kara and you, ma'am, and I just say that it's like a conflict. But I am the other side doing the development, the contemporary construction all over. I am the culprit. You know, it's always from you, the government, the policymakers. The public is, like obedience. And I will say that we've been slaves for more than 1,000 years. There was a disconnect, perhaps, with the original Vedic heritage. The Mughals, the Mongolians rather, came over. They had an impact on architecture, civilization, and onto the human settlement. And then, of course, the colonial architecture came over. They had a lot of impact. You know, and I've been very lucky to work on various large infrastructure projects. I'm just narrating that because the government, when we were doing some of the large airports, the verdict was okay, make global large span steel structures. So we started looking at that, as architect. Okay, we did it. Then it came in between, oh yeah, that वो तो एक ही जैसी लैंग्वेज बन रही है, So you go to Chennai, I did Chennai airport, you go to Goa, you go anywhere in other airport, and you get that sort of a contemporary architecture which is global. Then also it came to my mind, yaar, मैं बाहर से, why the global empowerment is so strong that I am changing my face, my India's face, my country's face, and my own face. Then I started looking at, I said, how do you react to the three P's, place, people, and the purpose? Where I'm doing, what I'm doing, for whom I'm doing, and why I'm doing this. As you, madam, said, that is the soul, it is the connect, belongingness. I go to Amritsar, but once I am within the Golden Temple, I have some sort of an environment. When I have outside, that environment practically vanishes. Why I'm narrating this, that today the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's policies, that you connect yourself, be Indian, buy Indian, create Indian. Why to have a global flavor when we have so much rich in heritage? And it's a treasure. And perhaps which we thought that preservation, conservation is sufficient. No. Man, we have to look ahead. एक मंदिर टूटने से गिरने से वो बात अलग है, लेकिन मुझे तो रीजनरेट करना है. We have to take a step from the heritage, lead from there, and start looking into contemporary architecture which has a connect with my heritage. How do you do that? That is what I think I'm very fortunate. We've been trying under the Government of India's leadership that we creating that sort of holistic architecture. Maybe I am doing a Ayodhya airport. How do you see that once I did first Bhubaneswar, Ayodhya, Varanasi, these cities have some significant values. A city of temple, Varanasi. A connect city, Bhubaneswar, a city like it's like Jagannath. So we started looking at how the heritage could be reflected contemporarily into the modern style of architecture. Why I go global? Why not go inside? We started looking at making Bhubaneswar airport like a chariot, Jagannath chariot, using the Konark wheel, the temple motifs, and make a chariot, contemporary chariot. And when I am at Bhubaneswar, I look at as I am Jagannath Puri. You say Lord Jagannath. You put the soul into the architecture and you put Lord into the architecture. And once you reach there, you say Bhagwan Jagannath. So that is the type of, I would say that it's not that built mass is a mass of brick and concrete, but it's a living organism which breathes, which is embodied with the environment. That is what human settlement we need to work on. So that is what I'm saying, that we're doing first urban ropeways in Varanasi from railway station to a temple with 5 stations. We're trying to put the language of Jagannath even onto these stations. So that once you are on the ropeway, you are with Bhagwan. You are with the Vishwanath temple. So that is the connectivity of architecture vocabulary, which needs to be reflected in our build form. And not that I touch only heritage as conservation and put it on one isolated platform, and I do not connect, and the modern architecture does not reflect the great heritage. The connectivity has to be there. So that is what precisely, as an architect, I see that, like we do Varanasi Airport, there we trying to put that language. Ayodhya, it's a touch to me, I've read Ramayana. I started looking at the complete understanding of the all 7 parts of Ramayana to reflect into the architecture, and when you put that into the Ayodhya airport, you practically start moving with Ram Lalla. So that is the type of understanding. It's not that somebody will say, see, it's global empowerment, I understand, but my culture, heritage has to be maintained and reflected into the built form, so I travel with that. So that is the type of understanding. And I'll proudly say that also, that now we're doing railway stations. I'm doing more than 48, 50 railway stations, all large ones like, Havra, which has the heritage. Chennai Egmore, which has the heritage. Lucknow Charbagh, which has the heritage. Prayagraj, which has the heritage. And mind it now, if I go into the bylaws of, 100 meters or here and there, that I cannot make anything. But they are the epicenters. They are becoming the most valuable, as you said, that money earning places from where I can do PPP mode, BOP mode, transfer. All that is happening, like Bandra railway station. So all that I'm just narrating. How do you connect the heritage with the contemporary architecture and put that language, vocabulary into your modern architecture, and you become a trendsetter? We give a language, Indian continuity of the language from the heritage to the contemporary language of art and architecture. Not that I put something which is only into a box. I said, यार मैं उसकी पूजा कर रहा हूँ. नहीं, मैं उससे सीखूंगा. You said that whatever has been done in the temples or in any of our great heritages, we cannot redo. We cannot reconstruct, but I can definitely learn to do something, copy something, and put into a contemporary manner where I say that I am connected by the great, past. So past is not to be put into a box, but past is to learn and make a continuity of our thought and reflect into, because I can be wrong in some understanding sometime, but if my vision, my thought process, my understanding of the holistic, continuity of my real heritage to be taken into this, into the mainstream and also into the contemporary thought processes of making new India, shaping new India, which will reflect upon expose I walk, I talk, I eat, whatever I do, I will have that sort of a character, which I think the ancient people, you said caves, you said, any of the temples or any of these places you go, is so vibrant. Why our cities are not getting vibrant with that sort of philosophy, the Vedic philosophy you talk about, the Sanatana philosophy you talk about, the Indian philosophy you talk about, that has to be reflected on our streets, on our patterns, on our every street. Cityscape needs to be addressed in that sort of a manner that we are connected always. And also, I had been talking to Meenakshi ji also. She is a very frank and straightforward lady. I get to learn that, today I think we are fortunate, the government of India is to actually in hand and glove with the architects, planners, and other people, and very, very, I would say, associated with all our projects and being monitored. Like, I just finished my Gwalior airport. Why I'm saying this, that art will reflect into architecture, and when all the elements of applied architecture are put together, they put soul into architecture, and then we say, yes, this building is breathing India. This environment is breathing India. It is not that I say Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, or Vaheguru. It is the process of understanding, of making things which are natural, humanistic, creative, and the creation will give us the creativeness of God, and that is the Almighty Sri Rama or Sri Krishna, Hare Rama or Vaheguru or anyone. So that I conclude that whatever we do, because the great heritage which we have, sometimes, one of my friends sent me every day a new monument on my WhatsApp, and every monument speaks the virginity of thought, the virginity of design, and the virginity of process. And you said, ऐसे ऐसे temples बने हुए हैं जो हम कभी सोच ही नहीं सकते कि हम बना भी सकते हैं. And जो caves आपकी बात कर रहे हो, वो तो मेरा ख्याल हम कभी ऐसी बातें, एक हम अंडरपास बनाते हैं तो पता लगता है लीक कर रहा है. Every day it is leaking. कहते बंद हो गया क्योंकि बारिश आई है, flooded, window breaks. अभी तक मेरा ख्याल है पिछले 50 साल से जब भी बारिश आती है डीटीसी की बस उसमें डूबी होती है. So that is what we are doing. लेकिन किसी भी बिल्डिंग हेरिटेज में चले जाओ, कहीं बिल्डिंग में चले जाओ, वहाँ ऐसी बात है नहीं. That is the integration of all sciences. That is the Vastu Shastra, which you say, once we integrate all sciences, applied elements, and do an integrated holistic planning, that is what we need in India of tomorrow. Thank you very much, and I am really very honored to be here in this honest, I would say the intellectual, and hope to learn many more things from all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words. May I now request Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, sir, to say a few words.
Namaskar. The chief guest, Mugdha Sinha ji, guest of honor, Shashi Balaji, Charanjit Singh ji, Professor Sanjay Shilpi Sinha ji, Pramita Bajpayee ji, Prashant Bajpayee ji in the audience, other distinguished faculty members, eminent scholars, learned academicians, and dear students. It is indeed a great pleasure for the IGNCA to be the co-partner in this very important conference, which is being organized by the Vastukala Academy. And our past experience with the Vastukala Academy has been very fantastic. In 2020, we organized a conference, and it was a very successful conference, and the kind of work which it produced was very phenomenal. I'm sure that most of you might have seen that work, and you get inspired to sort of do more class work in this conference as well. Lot has been said about the subject, and all the erudite scholars have expressed their views, and I know that there are sessions to be continued. So without taking the risk of being repetitive, I'll try to put some points which have not been flagged so far, so that for your benefit, I think we get a holistic picture of why we have picked up this particular subject. So we have talked about what has happened in the past and what is being done in the present scenario. But what is stored for the future is the major question, and how we are going to do, how we are going to shape our future. Mugdha Sinha ji has rightly pointed out that Honorable Prime Minister in his historic speech of the Independence Day, 15th August 2021, narrated about Panch Pran, and the third Pran was taking pride in our own lineage, in our own heritage. So how do we take that pride in our own heritage? That is very important and pertinent question. Another Pran was to decolonize your mind and think more democratically, more Indianized way. So if you decolonize your mind and think in a more Indian way, then you also realize that the kind of heritage we have requires an inner strength to sort of preserve and take it for the posterity. There is a limitation to every system, as we all know. Governments and the regulations, they have a limited access. You put a border of 100 meters, then 200 meters, then 300 meters. How many borders you are going to put unless we create the proper awareness amongst the people by and large to preserve their own heritage. And what it takes, the charity begins at home. How we are going to teach our students, how we are going to teach the younger kids to sort of take care of heritage and take the joy in watching or experiencing the heritage. That is more important. I don't know how many of you really visit the museum and what is your approach to visit the museum. But as an Indian, I can say that museums are on the lowest priority of an Indian to go and see some place. Whereas if you go to Europe or in any other part of the world, the museum is the first priority to see that place. But हमारे यहाँ क्या होता है कि चलो कुछ बचा नहीं है, 2 घंटे किसी एयर कंडीशन कमरे के नीचे गुजारना जरूरी है, so let us go to the museum. So that is my priority to see the museum. And even if we go to the museum, what all we are going to see? That is also a very major question. Mukdaji might be remembering that I narrated a paper in the museum conclave that was on the demuseumization. And why I say demuseumization was important, because why our museums are being so repulsive. They are not welcoming, as if, I mean, people working there are not welcoming. They are not inviting you to sort of come and visit the museum. They are sort of discouraging you to go out of the museum. And that's the kind of attitude. But then we need to understand that how we can build a total manpower resource to sort of take care of all these things. We need good curators, we need good conservators, we need good architects, we need good planners, and heritage management itself becomes a subject in its own. So why can't we teach the students how to manage their own heritage? That is more important in part. So to looking at the site, looking at a particular archaeological site or a monument, or to look at the piece of intangible cultural heritage, it's very important how we take it in our day-to-day life and how we perceive that as an integral part of my life. I have been always saying that what is my identity as an Indian, that also needs to be understood. And I have been saying this quite regularly, that when you go out of India, you go out of Bharat, and somebody, when you tell him that you come from India, what is the first reaction of the person towards you? They don't say you have a great military power, or they don't say you are a great economic power or a scientific power. The first reaction is, India, you have a great culture. That means culture becomes my identity as an Indian, as a Bharati. So if we don't realize that culture is the strongest point of my being an Indian, I can't really take care of my own heritage. That's the most important thing. So we must understand that you cannot bring out of culture from your life. It is an integral part of your life, you being an Indian. So if we realize that, then only we can take care of the heritage, may it be the tangible heritage, may it be the intangible heritage. And that needs to be sort of taken forward for the next generations. In 2047, when India celebrates its 100 years of independence, and we are saying that India is going to be the Vikasit Bharat or the Vishwa Guru, the intellectual guide for the entire world, who would be the people who are going to take it forward? You are the people who are going to take it forward. And if you are going to take it forward, what is the basis of you being the intellectual knowledge strength? That is your own tradition of intellect. And from where this tradition of intellect comes? The tradition of intellect comes from your ancestors who have to be understood to be taken forward for the next generation. But the unfortunate part is that India, being the richest country as far as the manuscript treasure is concerned, and we have more than 2 crores of manuscripts in the known resources, we hardly have anybody to sort of read those manuscripts. Just for your knowledge, we have more than 300 scripts in which the manuscripts are written. But how many of us really know about these scripts? How many can read these scripts? Are we really developing the manpower to read these scripts? That's the pertinent question. And how many of us are really interested to sort of take a career in doing something in conserving the manuscripts or reading the manuscripts? I'm very sorry to say, being a man from the academics, there are hardly few people, maybe at the graduate and postgraduate level, who could really find out the difference between the language and the script. Leave apart understanding the script. So we need to sort of understand these nuances. We need to build manpower. We need to build human resource in all these directions. So for next couple of years, we can promote these students, we can encourage these students, we can guide these students in taking career in all these things. So that we have enough archaeologists, enough archivists, enough conservators, enough people to work as paleographists, as manuscriptologists, who can really take care of the intangible cultural heritage or the tangible cultural heritage. There are inscriptions which are to be read, but there are hardly anyone who can read those inscriptions. And what is my contribution to read that inscription? When the youngsters go to an archaeological site and they see some wall empty, they will put a heart, Radha, heart, Ashok. That is my contribution to an archaeological site. And nobody stops them in doing that. That is another unfortunate part. So that kind of education, that kind of learning needs to be inculcated. I'm very happy an institution like Vastukala Academy is taking it forward, is taking this subject forward. And as Muktaji has rightly said, you need to collaborate with other institutions. More and more youngsters are supposed to be generated this kind of awareness so that they are aware of their duties and responsibilities as far as heritage conservation and management is concerned. It is not by rule, it is not by law, it is by your own emotional connect, as Shashi Balaji has rightly put it. It is the emotional connect which is required to be built with your own heritage resources. And I hope that this conference, along with the IGNCA, can generate some kind of emotional connect with your own heritage. And if that does, I'm happy that we are partially serving the purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Our dear students have prepared creative souvenirs for our dignitaries. I would request Ms. Pratima Bajpai ji and Dr. Achal Pandya ji to present the same to our dignitaries. Ms. Mukta Sinha ji, Dr. Shashi Bala ji, Dr. Sachidanand Joshi ji, and Professor Charanjit Shah ji. May I request everyone for a huge round of applause, please. Thank you, everyone. Our eminent moderators, Dr. Achal Pandya ji, Architect Deve Gupta, Architect Sangeeta Base, and Architect Shubhru Gupta shall be chairing the various technical sessions today and tomorrow. The participants will have ample opportunities to interact with these experts and listen to them. I would now like to invite our director, Professor Shilpi Sinha ma'am, to please render a vote of thanks to our dignitaries and everyone. Please put your hands together for her.
As we prepare to embark on the journey of the International Conference on Managing Heritage as an Asset to Posterity, MHAP 2024, I stand before you with a profound sense of gratitude. On behalf of Vastukala Academy and the organizing committee, I extend my sincerest thanks to all the distinguished guests, speakers, participants, reviewers, and volunteers who have contributed to the success of this event. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Prashant Bajpai from Vastukala Academy, Chairman Sir, and Dr. Sachidanand Joshi ji, Member Secretary IGNCA, for giving us the opportunity of making this international conference possible. To our esteemed guests, Ms. Mugdha Sinha, Dr. Shashibala, Professor Shah, thank you for your insights, and to all the other guests who will be gracing us with their presence. Your insights and contributions are eagerly awaited and will undoubtedly enrich our discussions. To our esteemed speakers and panelists, thank you for your commitment to sharing your expertise and experiences in heritage preservation. Your presentations will be instrumental in guiding our conversations and shaping our collective understanding. I would like to thank our core team, abstract review team, exhibition team, registration and stage management photography team, our student volunteers, and last but not the least, our anchors, for all your dedication and tireless efforts in planning and coordinating this event and making it successful. Your attention to detail and commitment to excellence have laid the foundation for a successful conference. As we embark on this journey of exploration and discovery, let us embrace the opportunity to learn from one another, to share our knowledge and experiences, and to chart a course for the sustainable preservation of our cultural heritage. I think we made a very humble beginning by sensitizing our students towards tangible and intangible aspects of heritage. Thank you all once again for your contributions, and I wish you all a fruitful and enriching experience. Let us seize this opportunity to make a meaningful impact in the realm of heritage preservation and continuation of our cultural lineage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would now request everyone to stand for the national anthem. I will now request all participants to proceed for tea. In order to stick to the time schedule, all the participants are requested to come to the hall in time and reconvene at 12. Thank you.